We'll call the House K-12 committee to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Carringer. Representative Cassada. Here. Chairman Sapicki. Here. Representative Clemens. Here. Chairman Haston.
Here.
Representative Hurt. Here. Representative Love. Chairman Reagan. Here. Chairman White.
Here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Does anybody have any personal orders before we begin? Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm being shadowed today by Mr. Aiden Pratt. He's a freshman at Lebanon High School, so if everybody make Mr. Pratt feel welcome, I'd appreciate it.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I want to run through the calendar just to give you an update on a few of these. A couple of have been taken off notice. On item number, let's see here. Item number 5 has been requested to roll to the last calendar. Item number 5, House Bill 1586. Item number 6, House Bill 815 is off notice. Item number 7, House Bill 1103 is off notice. And that brings us to item number 9, House Bill 1407 is off notice. I think I haven't heard any different yet, so we'll stay with it for right now. All right, so that brings us to item number 1, House Bill 324 by Representative Baum. Do I have a motion and a second? Properly motion. Representative Baum, you are recognized on House Bill 324.
Thank you, Chairman Haston. This is a bill that would change the grading scale in Tennessee for grades 9 through 12 to a 10-point grading scale. So an A would be 90 to 100, B would be 80 to 90, and so on and so forth. My motivation for this bill is so that we don't disadvantage our Tennessee students in 2 ways. The current grading scale, which is more stringent, 93 to 100 is an A, 85 to 93 is a B, and so on and so forth, puts our students at a disadvantage when they're applying to colleges and universities across the country and competing against students from other states that have a more lenient grading scale used for their GPA. When our students are applying to Harvard or Duke, if they have a 92 in a class, that's a B. If you're in Kentucky and you have a 92 in a class, that's an A. So my first concern is that we're disadvantaging our Tennessee students when they apply to colleges and universities out of high school. My second concern is very similar, and that is that we're disadvantaging our Tennessee students when they apply to competitive scholarships across the country. There's all kinds of scholarship money that's available. Some come from nonprofit organizations, some come from corporations. There's a Coca-Cola scholarship. GPA is going to influence who gets those scholarships as well. And so if our Tennessee students are on a more stringent grading scale than students from most, if not all, other states, then it's going to disadvantage them in that competitive process as well. So this is a bill that would change the grading scale for high school students, grades 9 through 12, to a 10-point scale. Now, having said that, an inadvertent effect of that is if grades come up in Tennessee a little bit, then that means there may be a few Tennessee students who had not been eligible for some of our state lottery scholarships that become available. And because of that, there is a fiscal note on this bill. It's not my intent to award more Hope Scholarship money. It's just sort of the result of moving a 92 from a B to an A. My intent is to help our Tennessee students get into Duke and Harvard and help them get Coca-Cola scholarships, but it's going to have an impact on Tennessee Hope scholarship proceedings as well, and so that's why there's the fiscal note, and I acknowledge that, although it wasn't my intent to find ways to award more Hope scholarship money when this bill was first initiated.
You've heard the explanation of the bill. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question is not for the sponsor particularly, but do we have an amendment on this bill?
Representative Baum?
Yes, I'm sorry, we do. The amendment is number 12689, and what the amendment does is it changes.
1 second, let's get a motion. Sorry for that oversight.
Second.
All right, it's properly motion. Go ahead and explain the amendment if you would.
The amendment changes when the bill would go into effect from from July the 1st, 2021 to July the 1st, 2022.
Okay, you've heard the explanation of the amendment. Does anybody have any objection to voting on adopting this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. We are back on the bill as amended. Thank you, Chairman Reagan, for that. Does anybody else have any questions now that we're back on the bill? Chairman Watt?
My question would be, and I appreciate you bringing this, and I understand where you're coming from, does this, since this does throw us into a $2.9 million, does this throw it into a lottery calendar? Would we not need to look at it like we do all the other lottery bills?
So it would have to go to full before, a subcommittee can't refer it to the lottery calendar. So it would have to be done under your jurisdiction at the next level if it got there. So
That's
that
what I
would-
was trying to prevent. Can I have
Go
one
ahead,
more-
Chairman
one more
Watt.
question? So have you looked at any more of the ramifications since Tennessee, this is one, it would, because of the way we, 92 and above for our Hope Scholarships, is there any other things, for years and years I've been up here and I always say what I found out in education is education is like a grandfather clock. When you turn one wheel gear, you turn in another one. Have you looked into other things that this will be changing to on a grading scale that would affect the way Tennessee does things?
Representative Baum?
I think that the primary effect would be how the GPA is calculated. If you get a 92 in a course, it's still a 92 in a course. It just affects the way you would calculate the grade point average. And of course, that's used for the things that I've mentioned: admissions into colleges and universities, acceptance of others, eligibility for other scholarships.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 324. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you.
We are going to roll item number 2 to the Hill and take up item number 3 on the calendar, which is House Bill 1667. Chairman Whitson, properly motioned. Chairman Whitson, you are recognized on House Bill 1667.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. There's no amendment on this. Code 9500 makes the bill. So a few years ago, I had the opportunity to address the Tennessee Association of School Librarians in talking about how best to lobby and promote their organization's agenda. And I'm a guy from the card catalog era of school libraries, okay? Things have changed a lot, and I've learned a lot from talking to them and their leadership. And what this does, and this is the third time I had the opportunity to present this bill before this committee over the years, and this is to establish a statewide library coordinator in the Department of Education. And there's several reasons for this. The coordinator duties will include assisting school librarians in implementing the department's strategic plan. They can consult, guide, and train school librarians to strengthen school library programs for students in kindergarten kindergarten through grade 12. They provide input on revisions to the school librarian evaluation model. They will work with the state library and archives to provide school libraries with equal access to high-quality education reading material and resources from the archives. They'll support the department's work by promoting best practices among school librarians and technical coordinators. They'll develop and promote strategies for school librarians to partner with classroom instructors to support school and district level instruction programs. And last night during the state address, the governor talked about a statewide plan for school librarians on determined materials and such. And this person could help ensure that the state implements that correctly across the entire state with our school librarians. With that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Thank you, Chairman Whitson. And first of all, does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? And I believe, do you have someone that was here today that wanted to speak?
Yes, I'm proud to have here Lindsay Kimmery. She's the coordinator of librarian services for Metropolitan Schools, but most of all, Lindsay has served 20 years in the Williamson County school system, and she can provide a brief update on this program and our intent on this legislation.
Without objection, we will go out of session and ask, let me make sure I say this right, Ms. Kimmery, is that right? All right. If you would, when you sit down and turn the mic on, just make sure you state your name and who you are with for the record, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but that's not including any questions that the committee might have. Sure. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm Lindsay Kimmery, and once again, I'm coordinator of library services for Metro Nashville Public Schools. And thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Representative Whitson. So currently, at least 34 states have an established coordinator position, including all of the states that border Tennessee, with the exception of Missouri. In our 147 school districts, only 5 have a district library coordinator. They provide leadership and professional development to our librarians. A state coordinator is an equitable solution to ensuring that all librarians receive proper professional learning and are equipped to support state initiatives. With a new BEP funding formula in the works, it's important we provide equitable funding to our school libraries. In a recent survey that the Tennessee Association of School Librarians conducted, we learned that Tennessee school libraries receive $6.11 per pupil. The national average is $11.35 per pupil. Funding per pupil varies tremendously across the state. We have districts receiving $10 per student and some receiving only $3 per student. We have some school libraries receiving no money whatsoever from their school district and have to purchase books with book fair profits. So a coordinator will work with district leadership to analyze the funding needed for their libraries to ensure that state minimum requirements are met and to connect our libraries with high quality and cost-effective resources. In addressing the comment that Representative Whitson made about the state of the state, and Governor Lee said that we want to ensure parents know what materials are available to their students in their libraries. So while school library catalogs are already accessible online and library collection development procedures are posted online and reconsideration procedures exist to address concerns of parents over school library materials, a state coordinator will just ensure that that is happening in every district across the state. He also spoke last night about the importance of science, technology, and engineering. And librarians are essential to Tennessee in growing the next generation of that technical workforce because we integrate STEM into library lessons and programming. He also mentioned that every child doesn't yet have access to a high-quality education. So if we are committed to this, then our blueprint should include a school library in every school that is filled with current, relevant, high-quality books and materials and new technologies, and with a certified full-time librarian at the helm. And with a state coordinator in the Department of Education, we can better achieve the goals for literacy and learning and create greater equity for the students of our state. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being here today. Does anybody have any questions for our guest? Chairman Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure that if this position is created, it does not usurp the authority of the local education authority, the school board. School boards are responsible for the textbooks as well as the books that go in the library. So you foresee no problem with that situation. The local school boards are still going to be in charge.
Correct.
Thank you.
Chairman Sapiki?
And just kind of to follow up on that, I want to make sure that we're not creating a lobbyist position here for for the librarians across the state. This
Correct.
person will be working for the Department of Education
Correct.
at the direction of the Commissioner of Education.
Correct.
And so they'll be carrying out what the Commissioner of Education and Department of Education has in regards to librarians.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Appreciate it.
information.
Thank you for your time.
And without objection, we'll be going back into session, and brings us back on to item number 3, House Bill 1667. Chairman Whitson, do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Does anybody have any questions? Question has been called. Oh, with no. Chairman Watt, you are recognized.
Thank you. Got to be fast up here. I just want to say that I do very much support this. I met with Chairman Whitson and Ms. Kimmery a couple of years ago about this, and I just really feel strongly, because libraries are such an important part of our schools, that to have a state coordinator will be very efficient in carrying out their work. So I think this is a good bill, so I'm very supportive.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman Reagan?
Thank you. And to the sponsor, I just want to make sure that the witness testimony is in line with the legislative intent. So for the record, would you mind restating for the legislative intent?
Yes, that is our legislative intent as stated in testimony.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 1667. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. On to full education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. Appreciate it.
That brings us to item number 4, House Bill 1754 by Representative Smith. Properly motion. Representative Smith, I believe you have a untimely filed amendment.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
It is,
All right.
it's drafting code 12895.
All right, we'll be considering an untimely filed amendment, so all those in favor of considering this, please say aye. Aye. No? The ayes have it, so I need a motion and a second on the amendment. Go ahead. We've already gotten that, hadn't we? All right, properly motioned. You're recognized on your amendment.
All right, thank you, Chairman, for your indulgence on the untimely filed amendment. And the explanation behind that untimely filed amendment is I want to offer thanks of Charlie Buffalino and Jay Klein of the department in making this a better bill and making sure that it's something that the department can actually implement and serve our students.
Does the amendment make your bill?
It does.
Okay, let's go ahead and get the amendment on the bill. All those questions been called. All those in favor of adopting this amendment, please say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. All right, we are back on the bill as amended. Representative Smith, you are recognized.
Thank you. As we know, we're having a struggle to have more and more teachers in our classrooms in the K through 12 space. This bill only applies to 6 through 12 grades, but those who are licensed in the state of Tennessee and are qualified as adjunct professors in the post-secondary space can operate in the classroom. And in current code, it's permitted that a 9th through 12th grade class can be taught by an adjunct professor, meeting certain licensure requirements, and this would actually extend that down to 6th through 12th grade, and it would be, the department would receive a letter of recommendation for that adjunct professor to enter into their, the ability to teach. And so, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions, but also want to offer opportunity for the department to respond as well.
All right, you've heard the explanations. Anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor. I just had a couple questions. So, adjunct professors in post-secondary generally specialize in one subject area or another and may not have, teaching middle school is a unique skill, I think, with a middle schooler myself. I can only imagine. So how transferable are those skills as an adjunct professor and their specialization potentially in one area to 6th grade or 7th or 8th?
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. And your line of questioning explains why we changed my bill from K through 12, because the point was made by the department that because of the subspecialty, whether it be chemistry, biology, et cetera, and that would be clearly at the jurisdiction of a local educational agency in their hiring processes to place those particular professionals appropriately so that the department can inform the applicant, the adjunct professor, can bring a letter of recommendation, but clearly we don't mandate or put into code a requirement that there is a blanket approval for any and all provisions, that hiring is done at the local level.
Representative Clemens?
Thank you. And I'm not as familiar with this provision in the code, so I was unaware of this until I read this bill. But is any professor of a post-secondary institution? I mean, does this apply to some of these for-profit online schools? If somebody's a professor or an adjunct professor of some online post-secondary degree program, can they qualify for this, or is it only licensed and certain colleges and institutions?
Representative Smith?
Thank you, Chairman, and very good question. Again, all this it remains under the jurisdiction of the Department of Education. And so these applicants would go under the same review process and application process of anyone applying for a job within a school system. And so clearly, if qualifications become questionable, that again goes back to the the Department of Education as well as the LEA to make sure that the quality is there. Again, not trying to minimize the value of certain institutions of higher learning or placing a higher value, but I think that we still allow the jurisdiction to remain at the local level.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 1754. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You're on to full education.
Again, Chairman, thank you, and thank you, committee.
All right, that brings us back to item number 2. Does that get us all the way back around?
Yeah, that and, well, number 8.
Love's here, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be going to item number 2, House Bill 1838 by Chairman Sapicki. Yes. Well, I was just going back into the order of the people that were. Oh, you're right. You're right. That's what. Did you want to take yours off notice, or were you wanting to present today? Is there going to be a final calendar? Yes. Would you mind going to the microphone?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just want to find out what the particulars were this go around about bills off notice and rolling and.
There'll be a final calendar that will deal with a lot of the BEP formula bills that are coming through. So that's where we're going to be putting a lot of the BEP formula bills until we see kind of what we're dealing with the governor's formula that's going to be presented.
And so in my posture, do I need to make a motion that it goes? I can't move that it goes to that calendar, can I? Or okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'll.
No, he's not. No,
right,
this
that's
is
why I
not
was
his
asking
third.
about the
No,
rules.
you're not at the third calendar yet.
Okay. All right.
You'd be fine moving it. You'll be able to move it out of the final calendar.
Okay. Is anybody else there?
Leader Camper had a BEP
All right.
that she rolled earlier.
Okay. All right. That'll be fine then.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So I need to make an official motion. So moved that it.
All right. Without objection, we'll be rolling item number 8, House Bill 1000, to the final calendar. Sorry about that. We will be back on item number 2, House Bill 1838 by Chairman Sapicki. And do we have a second? Second. Chairman Sapicki, you are recognized on House Bill 1838.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 1838 creates balance, improves transparency, and brings more accountability to the State Board of Education. Currently, the process, the governor of the state of Tennessee appoints all 9 members of this board. The board is made up of people already defined in code about different backgrounds, different diversities, to make sure there is some type of representation across the state. However, the governor has sole appointing authority about where people come from. What this bill does is it creates a better balance to it. Our Constitution affords to checks and balances in our Constitution to make sure that no one entity has the power over another entity to dictate what they're going to do or respond how they're going to respond. So that's why we have the balance system with the three branches of government. What this bill wants to do is bring that type of balance and diversity and equity to the State Board of Education so they operate more autonomously from the executive branch. They can actually consider the bills that we send there for rules and promulgation of policy, making sure that they're doing what's best for the children of Tennessee, okay, without any type of interference from any other department or any other branch that's in our government. It's a pretty simple bill. What it does is, and I'll read it to you right now, it says the Speaker of the Senate shall appoint to the 1st, the 4th, and the 7th Congressional District. The Speaker of the House shall appoint to the 2nd, the 5th, and the 8th, and the Governor shall appoint to the 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th. With the new congressional maps we've drawn, this has an opportunity to create more diversity on our board, as in Shelby County is almost self-contained as a congressional district itself. And now Davidson County, whether you agree or not, has the opportunity for the chance of multiple people serving on the State Board of Education based off the way the congressional districts were drawn. This bill will bring balance to the board to prevent one view of education from being represented or presented. It eliminates the influence over the Board of Education by the Department of Education, by the Governor's office, or anybody else. Because one thing I can tell you right now, the people who sit in the Governor's office seat right now will not be there forever. We'll have different people throughout different times sitting there. And the way the board is made up right now, those 9 people are appointed by them. We still confirm them. I've been looking very hard, and I haven't found a case where any person that's been appointed by the governor has been denied by the Senate or the House. So our lieutenant governor, our speaker, our governor, appointing 3 members here, creating balance to the State Board of Education so they can operate autonomously to make sure that the decisions they're making are what's in the best interest of the students of Tennessee. Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to answer questions, and if we have to go out of session, I understand.
We will take some questions, but we do have some people on the list. If there's no objection, we will go out of session, and we'll go through the department, and we have also the State Board of Education and the Governor's office on the list. So if without objection, we will go out of session, and we'll ask the Department of Education to come up to say a few words, or both of you at the same time will be fine. Department and Governor's office, and just state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Brent Easley, Governor's Legislative Director.
Charlie Bufalino, Assistant Commissioner of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the Department of Education.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this bill today. The Governor's Office is opposed to this legislation. This legislation, as Chairman Sapicki described, would remove 6 of the 9 appointments from the Governor's authority right now. The legislature currently has approval power over each of the 9 appointments that go for the State Board of Education, and the legislature can vote those up or down, which we believe is a good process, and we feel like we have some solid quality members on the State Board of Education currently, and it from our perspective is working well. I know the department has some additional comments on the process and the current operating of the State Board too.
Yes, thank you, Brent. Thank you, Chairman and members. I'd also add that in addition to the confirmation authority and oversight function that the legislature enjoys, the legislature also, through the Government Operations Committee, has the ability to review and approve or deny every rule that comes out of the State Board agency, yet another check. So what we would be doing if this bill were to become law is it essentially would give the legislature approval authority of 2/3 over the members, confirmation or denial authority of all appointments for the members, and approval denial authority over all of the rules. Those latter two are in place currently, and we believe are sufficient authority for the legislature to exercise their proper function and oversight. And the other thing I will note too, we do have some concerns at the department with what might happen with this in terms of possible vacancies that may arise. There have been some difficulties in having vacancies filled, and the work of the state board as the executive branch, rulemaking, policymaking authority of the state is so critical to the operation of our schools. And I think over the course of the last couple of years, that board has needed to be very flexible in having, in addition to their 4 annual quarterly meetings, have had to have several emergency meetings to take up critical issues for our students that could not wait for a quarterly meeting. If there were issues with appointments that led to long-term vacancies that could create issues with quorum, it really could have a negative effect on our students' educators. And again, we feel that the way the system is working currently is working, that there are proper checks and balances in place. And then as a final note, I will say that there are only 3 states in the country in which the legislature has any appointing authority over state boards of education. There are a handful of states where state board members are elected, but the vast majority are appointed by governors in exactly the same way that it is in Tennessee. Those 3 states are New York, Mississippi, and Indiana. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for our guests? Chairman Watt?
Thank you, Chairman. For the governor's office, Mr. Easley, now the office under the governor, we have the office of the boards and commissions. Now, are they a part of helping to support the appointment of these 9 members currently?
Yes, sir, they are.
So that is their full-time responsibility, is to make sure that boards and commissions are filled in a timely and appropriate manner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Reagan?
Thank you, and to whichever you choose to address. It appears to me that we currently have a situation where the Department of Education works for the governor as part of the cabinet, and the State Board of Education, which was created separately some years back to help separate some of the powers from the Department of Education, but still, if we allow the governor all the appointments, has the influence of the governor not just in the department but on the board as well. So the question to you is, what issue, other than just wanting to keep the power, do you see as prohibiting the legislature from making equal or better appointments to the governor? Any?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. I think the way we approach this is the state board, the team they have there, and the members that are on the state board now, this is a system that is working effectively. And so I think we kind of view this as a solution in search of a problem for how to better put together the State Board of Education.
Chairman Reagan?
Thank you. And to Mr. Buffalino, you mentioned that the state board has rulemaking authority. I will point out to you that rules have the force of law once they're implemented, and that is a delegation from the legislature. So we already have, as you pointed out, legislature in that sense. I fail to understand why you wouldn't want legislature involved in the other side. Do you have any comments on that?
Thank you, Chairman. I think what I would say is in that force of law delegation comes back to the legislature in the review and approval of those rules. I think the legislature is able to exercise its authority over every decision that the state board makes through rulemaking. Those have to go through your committee and Chairman Roberts' committee. I fail to see the connection with the appointment authority on that front. I think that the way it's set up now gives the legislature adequate oversight authority both over the appointments in terms of the approval and denial, and ultimately over the rules themselves as they come before the government operations committees.
Chairman Reagan?
Thank you. One quick follow-up. The sponsor of the bill pointed out, and to my knowledge is correct, but I want to make sure that it agrees with yours, that no nominee has been refused in the legislative review process and confirmation. Is that true?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not aware of any. I would have to go back and look. That is up to the decision of the legislature whether they do or do not approve any of the members that are put up for confirmation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for the governor's office or the department? Representative Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm curious, the State Board of Education falls under the Department of Education, correct?
Their staffing pattern falls under the Department of Education from an administrative or a funding perspective.
And the Department of Education is in the executive branch?
Yes, sir.
And so we're the legislative branch, that's the executive branch. The commissioner is appointed by the governor. And contrary to what was said, I think while the commissioner works at the pleasure of the governor, is appointed by the governor, the department works for the schools of Tennessee, not the governor. It's made up of state employees and appointees who are responsible for representing and working for students, teachers, faculty, and our schools. So if it's in the executive branch and that it is executive function, then I'm at a loss for why the legislature wants to increase its authority over that appointment. And look, I don't think it's any secret. I don't agree with this governor on pretty much anything when it comes to education especially. But, you know, if we're going to start reaching over into other branches of government, it's a dangerous path we're going to head down. And I don't know that we voted against a single appointment he's made since he's been in office for 3 years. I don't know. So, I mean, we have that power to, you know, I guess vote against anybody he appoints. So I'm not sure what the point of this legislation is, but if you want to speak to any of that, I appreciate it.
I would agree with your summation of the Department of Education employees. I think the commissioner views that as her role as well. We're trying to serve the students of Tennessee, and I think the state board would agree with that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chairman.
While we're out of session, we did have Nathan James was down the list. Nathan James from the State Board of Education, if you would like to come up and state your name for the record. Yeah, the middle one's fine.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Nathan James. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Legislative and External Affairs for the State Board of Education. I simply went through the process of signing up so that in the event that a member did have a question for the State Board of Education, I would be within the House rules and able to answer it. So with that, if there's no questions, I'm happy to go back. And if you'd like to hear from me, I'm happy to stay, whatever you'd like.
Chairman Watt.
Thank you, Mr. James. I'm glad to see you back in the country.
Thank you, sir.
Had a little difficult time getting back. My question to you on the state board, having worked with DOE and the state board, I see the importance of what the state board's role is.
Sure.
Give us a brief understanding of the role of the 9-member board and its importance to the state board as far as you being able to conduct business and make decisions.
So the role of the State Board of Education, and keep in mind, we've had some variety of a State Board of Public Instruction since the 1830s. It's looked different ways at different points in time, but it was reorganized into what exists now in 1984 by act of Lieutenant Governor John Wilder. He was the prime sponsor of that legislation. And at that point in time, the members actually served 9-year terms. And the concept of it was there had been times in the past when the commissioner, for example, had been on the State Board of Education, and the concept is that there's no set of issues that defines the legitimate activity of state government like compulsory public education does. So there was one thing that Governor Wilder, rest his soul, one of the things he would talk about he'd say is roads, prisons, and schools. Those are the things that involve every single Tennessean. So the concept of the State Board of Education is to make certain that the rules and the influence and the concerns of people of very many walks of life are play a specific role in our state education policy. You have in the statute a requirement for one active teacher. At the moment, we have one active teacher and 2 or 3 others that have been teachers at various points in time. They're engineers, they're business people. There's a lot of different walks of life. We have one member right now who's the president of a couple of rural hospitals, right? But it is the legislature's way of saying that education absolutely affects every Tennessean. Whether you're a parent or a student or you don't have children, it affects business in terms of who is able to go to work for companies. It affects property values, every bit of it. And so the board itself is charged under the law with creating rules under the laws that this legislature passes. You all, in the course of your time every year, you may create a new program. And not all the questions about how that's to be implemented are answered in that bill. And so you give rulemaking authority. And we continue to be absolutely dedicated to being as transparent as we can be with every step of that. I hope that answers the question.
Chairman Watt.
What I was really trying to get, it's a 9-member board.
Right.
What is a quorum?
Quorum is, it's actually a 10-member board.
10-member board.
We have a student member. Yeah. So it's a quorum is 6 when there's a student member. It's 5 when there is not a student member appointed.
Okay. I remember, was it a year ago that there's a special issue came up and the board had to be called together?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you don't have a quorum, what do you do?
If there is not a quorum, we have to reschedule until we can get a quorum. It's just like you can't convene the House of Representatives without a quorum. The Senate cannot be convened without a quorum, and neither can we. And of course, we've also got the requirements in law to notice each of our meetings. So we can't say, well, we'll try in 5 minutes. It's got to be a minimum of, I think it's 6 days, 7 days.
Chairman Watt.
So is this a fair comment? So the policies and procedures that the state board adopt, are they critical to our educational system or state government continuing? Or I mean, if you can't make decisions, then
it's very critical work. It's very important work, and that's one of the reasons that our members are dedicated to reaching out to the people they serve. They all serve 770,000 individual people in their congressional districts. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll be going back into session. Back on House Bill 1838. Chairman Sapicki, do you have anything you'd like to add before we open it up for questions?
Please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me talk about a couple things that were said here. There's nothing in this bill that replaces the confirmation process. Nothing. There's nothing in this bill that usurps the authority of GovOps. There's nothing in this bill that usurps any authority of the state board in rulemaking or policy. Nothing. The Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the House, the Governor of the state of Tennessee stood yesterday all together and made a promise of $1 billion more in education. To imply or assume or an innuendo that the Speaker of the House, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor would not be able to fill these spots is not right. Education is one of the biggest things we do in Tennessee. Education affects all aspects of Tennesseans' life. It affects corrections and how many people we have incarcerated by the lack of education. Drug abuse, alcoholism, teen pregnancy, opportunities for life. We sit here on the Education Committee, quite possibly one of the most important committees in the state of Tennessee, which is going to determine what the future of Tennessee looks like. Balance with the Board of Education, autonomy, independence to do what's best for our students in Tennessee without the department, who's appointed by the governor, wielding influence on the board, without the governor stepping in and wielding influence on the board. 3, 3, and 3. 9 congressional districts representing all the different parts of Tennessee. Opportunity for diversity, greater diversity on the board, can only benefit our students in Tennessee. I urge you to move this forward. And remember this, the General Assembly gave this authority to the governor. we can exercise the control to pull some of that authority back to us, once again, to create some balance, some independence, accountability, and transparency. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to answer his questions.
You've heard the explanation of the bills. Anybody have any questions for our sponsor? Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor. I'm just curious what the impetus was behind this legislation. Did the State Board of Education do something that you disagreed with?
Chairman Sapiki?
State Board of Education, sir? No, sir. The impetus behind it, there was a bill that we had that we were working on. I think it might have been last year or the year before. I don't remember where it was, but it was about waivers. And the General Assembly took the authority of waivers away from the Commissioner of Education because of abuse. Now, in that bill, the State Board of Education was supposed to get support from the Department of Education to help if there were any waiver requests for our textbooks and curriculum. And we had to come back and work on legislation on that because the Department of Education insisted that they wanted 3 more people to help out. When the bill that we passed said you shall help out. The not cooperating, not adhering to the bills that we have, and the Department of Education trying to wield some influence here on a board that their purpose is to promulgate the rules and policy of the bills that we create for education without interference from anybody. I hope that answers your question, Representative Clemens.
Representative Clemens, follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm just concerned that we're seeking to pass legislation and rewrite a process here that's worked pretty well for some time simply because a few members had a disagreement with an action on a particular piece of legislation, and it comes off as some sort of revenge or vendetta and payback. So I guess I'm just concerned what we're doing here to achieve that aim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Sapiki?
So, no revenge, no angst, balance, independence, autonomy, key things in government for people to make good decisions. Sometimes leadership is very difficult. Just because we're going to continue to do something because we've always done it that way, that's not a good reason to do something. Making sure that the people that we appoint to the State Board of Education realize that they don't work for one person or one branch, that they work for the students of Tennessee and the people of Tennessee to make sure our educational system is the best. I urge us to move this bill forward, and let's continue this discussion and make sure that we're putting the best chance for our State Board of Education to be independent.
Chairman Wyatt, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ever since this bill came to my attention, I've been trying to understand all aspects. That's why I'm asking all these questions. Just like the first bill, the 90 to 100. What are we changing in addition? Because things build upon each other. So my question would be, now whether the governor or leadership in the House and Senate, that's not my concern. My concern is, have you spoken to the lieutenant governors, the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the House about they're not set up, they do make appointments, I know that, but is their office set up to make these kind of appointments in a timely manner, or would they have to bring in additional staff or whatnot to make sure, because we do have the boards and commissions on the governor, that's why that was put in place. So my concern is, what do they say to you about taking on this responsibility?
Chairman Sapiki?
Mr. Chairman, not to speak for the Speaker of the House or the Lieutenant Governor, I can tell you this, that both of them are aware of this bill. I have received nothing from their end with their concerns.
Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Sapiki, I came in here trying to be open-minded and just convince myself that we need to make this change. I struggled to get on board with making it because of, again, what we have is working, and I understand what you're saying about it's not always good just to keep going, but I share the concerns that that of the problems, with the ripple effect problems we could have with what's been working and moving forward. And you know, I feel like a lot of times what we need to do is fix problems, and I don't know that in my mind, I'm not convinced there's a problem that we need to fix. And I don't want to create problems that we turn around and start having to fix in subsequent years. So just to give you a heads up on where I am, I struggle to get behind this because I'm not sure what problems we're going to cause outside of this. Thank you.
Chairman Sapiki?
Well, the process would be basically the same. So there's no change to that, except the appointments are still going to come through us. The board is still going to function as the board. They're still going to promulgate the rules and the policies. You will be able to remove some of that influence from the department. That's a question you have to ask yourself as a representative. Do you want to have the Department of Education in their capacity as being the commissioner being appointed by the governor, and these 9 people being appointed by the governor? Are you okay with that potential influence over the Board of Education? That's a decision you're going to have to make as a representative, and we're all going to have to make. We have had issues with the Department of Education since we've come in together. We've had issues with the department on some, Mr. Chairman Hazen, trying to be careful here, okay? We've talked about this. Trying to influence a decision by the board, trying to interject maybe a policy that they may want to see, getting involved with the textbook commission. We've seen that overreach that we've had to talk about and we've had to pull back. Giving this board the ability of these 3, 3, and 3 appointments without the fear of reprisal from the executive branch. It gives this board the ability to say, no, we're not going to do that. There's no way that a governor or a House or a Senate could wield that influence over that board anymore, because now it's 3, 3, and 3. And you all know that we try to work on bills here in the House, and sometimes our Senate colleagues do not agree with us. So we have that automatic balance and independence between the executive branch, the Senate, and the House that we could apply to the Board of Education that we do on other textbook commission. The charter school commission is all broken up, and they seem to be functioning at a very high level. So hope that answers your question.
Representative Carringer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sort of really probably going to reiterate a lot of what my fellow representative just mentioned. You know, across our state we have a lot of boards, and you know, from different departments and all. And I guess I'll use my 911 director, since he was here from Knox County today. I believe their board is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is probably chosen more about how you're wanting this board to go, essentially, kind of. But however, my state board member from Knox County was just appointed, who I think is exceptional, and we probably have the best of the best to be representing on the state board. So, you know, I can see there's both sides, and I told him, I said, I'm coming in with an open mind today to listen to both sides and to make what I feel is the best discussion and decision. And so I mean, this is where we start. We start by discussing this and making sure that we all have gone through every channel to make sure we make the best decision. And it affects all. I mean, it does affect even to our full education board. So I guess I'm just trying to kind of put it all together and see, too, if we've got 3, 3, and 3, will we ever, if we have the different areas and all, will they ever be able to come to a decision and not have such a somewhat in this or somewhat in that in terms of making decisions for it? So I'm just trying to listen and make the right decision where we need to go on it.
Chairman Speaking.
I think I got your question. I'm going to try to answer it. If I don't, just stop me, okay? The person that serves on your State Board of Education right now, I don't know what congressional district that person would be in, but the way this would work moving forward, and in the bill it talks about this, is until July 1st of 22. So as these board members would start to cycle off, the State Board of Education would know exactly by congressional district where's everybody located all over the state. State Board of Education has some type of reflection right now across the state of Tennessee. It's not by congressional district, it's kind of by choice. But what would happen is the State Board of Education would say, let's say your person's coming up and they're ready to cycle off the board, then they would determine is, do we have all 9 congressional districts fit, right? And if they don't, then you would have to start, depending on which congressional district is open, that person would make the next appointee to start to fill that out, to make sure we spread that all across the state of Tennessee, creating opportunity for everyone across state to have an opportunity to serve on the State Board of Education, okay? I get the governor's representative being here, right? That he doesn't want his 9 picks to go away. It's, what do you want to call it? Control, whatever, right? I get it, right? But the thing you got to kind of scratch your head on right now is, why does the Department of Education oppose this? Why do they care who serves on the State Board of Education? They're supposed to work with whoever's there. Why do they oppose the 3, 3, and 3? What would they care? Unless it goes back to who's appointing them. The 9 members appointed by the governor right now. There is a triangle here between the State Board, the Department of Education, and the executive branch, the governor's office. All we're trying to do is break up that triangle and make sure that we're making decisions what's best for the children of Tennessee. Hope to answer your question, ma'am.
Chairman Reagan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to address the comment made earlier by one of my colleagues here, you know, the old saw about it works fine now, so why fix it? I would point out that we have other boards, some of which have been mentioned already, that are already doing the 3, 3, and 3. We haven't had a problem with that. I will mention also, just FYI, since I chair a committee that sees 243 boards and agencies, I know from firsthand experience when the property of disagreement would be involved in that. To this point in time, I have to say that the disagreements that I have seen on boards has been disagreements in opinions on how best to do something or not, as the case may be, not related to whether or not we should appoint them this way or that way. I really don't think board members are concerned with that. What we should be concerned about, I think personally, is balance of power. And as was mentioned earlier, you know, there's an executive branch, a legislative branch, judicial branch, et cetera. The point I want you to remember is that the board was created by the legislative branch. It does not exist under constitutional authority. We created it under statute. And I think it's within our purview to staff it any way we see fit. With that said, we have, in fact, as a body, chosen to staff other boards and agencies with the executive and the legislative branch participating in joint selection. So the idea that we should continue what we're doing now just because that's the way we've been doing it, I have to side with another statement from a different colleague that I don't see that that's a valid argument, to be truthful. The issue becomes, do we make the decision as a body? We're deciding on behalf of our colleagues now that when this gets to the floor, if it gets to the floor, do we put that choice in front of the rest of our colleagues to go 3, 3, and 3 or leave as is? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Speaker, do you want to add anything to that? Representative Cassida, you are recognized. Nothing. I'm sorry.
There we go. I support the bill, and I was going to call a question, but I can't now, so sorry.
Anybody else have any questions for the sponsor? Oh, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think my comments were along the lines of with new geographic congressional districts.
Okay. Chairman.
You're good, go ahead.
With new congressional districts, with members rolling off, my concern was going to be about some level of stability needed. Because as persons roll off, to your point, you have current members who are serving in that district. The district changes. What becomes of that? I know there's a program in place to do that, but I think my feeling was if you had one entity right now who was able to figure that out, it may provide more continuity going forward instead of having at least three individual parties, or three separate parties rather, doing that. So just trying to find the path of least confusion, which makes it a bit difficult for me to get behind. I understand the concept, but I think with so much going on with the members falling off and congressional districts changing, I do have concerns about that. But thank you for bringing the legislation.
Chairman Sabiki.
Understand your concerns. There's change all the time on the boards. Some people say, I've had enough and we got to find someone else to serve there. Sometimes you may get someone from a totally different part of the state to serve on there, which now, hypothetically in Davidson County, right? Let's say someone cycles off from Davidson County. Under the current proposal, it can be from anywhere. So that representation in Davidson County could be gone, whereas if it's tied to a congressional district, now you start to get some continuity to where, and I'm doing this from memory, I believe the previous district had Nashville by itself with one congressman. Now you have the opportunity to have three shots to have someone serving on the Board of Education, which with Shelby County, being able to represent a urban district on the State Board of Education with the challenges that they face is very important. Suburban and rural, et cetera, right? So I hope that we would see that going forward, it's going to present an opportunity for us to make sure that our urban districts are represented with more opportunity there to be chosen. Under the current system, it's kind of at the whim of a governor. This governor may be very good at, the next governor may not be. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, out of deep respect for my fellow committee member and the sponsor, just so he knows, I'm just not there yet. So as you go through the committee and you calculate in your head, I just can't get there right now.
Chairman Sabiki.
Good.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Question has been called. Seeing no objection, we'll be voting on House Bill 1838. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
Roll call.
Roll call vote, I think, is the fairest way to go about this. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Carringer.
Aye.
Votes aye. Representative Cassada.
Aye.
Votes aye. Chairman Sapicki. Oh. Aye. Representative Clemens.
No.
Chairman Haston.
Aye.
Representative Hurt.
No.
Representative Love. No. Chairman Reagan.
Aye.
Chairman White.
No.
Chairman, you have 5 ayes and 4 noes.
The ayes have it on the full education. I believe that brings us to the end of the calendar. That was an adventurous first day back for me. Thank y'all. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Will you stand adjourned?